Not everything that you call self-improvement is actually improving your life. Sometimes it's just ignoring yourself and calling it discipline. Sometimes it's just pushing through things that you know aren't right. Yes, I'm just building discipline era that people glamorizes so much. And if you're already arguing with me in your head, yeah. So, before this sounds like a lecture, I am saying this as someone who has done it a lot. Don't get me wrong, discipline is good. Of course it is. Through discipline, you get to improve the current state of your life one step at a time. You know that feeling when you go, okay, I'll get home from work by 6, I'll be at the gym by 6:30, I'll work out for an hour, then I'll cook, eat by 8, shower, work on my business, write a little, learn a new skill, and then be in bed by 11. And when you actually follow through on that plan, like clockwork, like a baby, you sleep that night. There's a real satisfaction that comes with doing what you said you do, and if you've ever done that before, then you'd know full well what I'm talking about. But what happens when the thing you're pushing through stops giving back? When something you once liked or even believed in starts taking more from you than it actually gives, and you still tell yourself, it's just part of the process. Well, the problem is, there's no clean moment where you go, oh, this is self-abandonment now. It doesn't announce itself. It just slowly shifts from effort to force. And you keep going because technically, you still can. You're still breathing. You can't stop. You're not dead. It would all go down the drain if you stop now. And that's usually where the line starts to blur. So sometimes self-improvement is just self-abandonment, but with a nicer name. This isn't a self-help video. I just happen to have a mic, but I don't have answers. Okay, I just want to talk about the moment where self-improvement quietly turns into self-abandonment. Let's talk about working on yourself first. Okay, let's talk about that. It isn't easy. Like, growth takes willpower, especially at the beginning. I always think of it like being a toddler, learning how to walk. You try to stand up, you fall on your butt over and over. Okay, you don't look graceful because you're not good at it, but nothing about it feels wrong. It just feels new. And eventually your legs get stronger, you stand up a little longer, then you take a step and then another. And one day you're running around like there wasn't even a time that you couldn't even stand up. That's what real growth feels like to me. It's uncomfortable, sure, but it doesn't feel like you're betraying yourself. It's more like a slow burn. Not exciting, not dramatic. It just feels hard in a way that makes sense. The thing about growth is, even when it's difficult, it still feels internally aligned. You know what I mean? Like, doing the hard thing just feels natural, nevertheless. You don't have to argue with yourself to keep going. Now, self-abandonment feels different. You don't fall and get back up. You drag yourself forward because you're convinced that stopping is failure. Because what would be the point of doing all of that if you're gonna stop halfway through, right? Except you're not even halfway anymore. You're past that. You've reached the end, but you keep pushing through a finish line you've already crossed because it didn't give the payoff that you expected. I too was in a situation like that before, and I didn't realize it for a long time. So if this feels personal, don't worry, it is for me too. And if you're sitting there thinking like, okay, but how do I know if I'm going for real or just performing stability? Yeah, here's how it usually shows up by far from my experience. One, you're not becoming better. You're becoming numb. You keep doing more, but are you really seeing progress that matters to you? And I don't mean the surface level stuff, like more work hours rendered, more tasks done, or higher metrics on paper. I mean real return. The kind that makes you feel, okay, this is why I'm doing this. Because if there's no ROI at all, even a small one, and you're just pushing through out of sheer willpower, is that really growth? Or it's just become an endurance race at this point? 2, you keep needing more motivation just to tolerate your day. The work itself isn't compelling anymore, so you keep outsourcing momentum from motivational quotes, hustle hard videos, podcasts, pep talks. But the moment those end, everything else just seems to collapse with it because you're not inspired. You're being propped up. You're not moving towards something. You're just trying to survive it. 3, you start dreading things you used to like. For me, I really like creating content way back in 2024, but not even as a main responsibility, but just something that I felt that was useful, something that made me feel alive, which sounds dramatic, but when I kept creating with zero return, there was no feedback, no payoff, no movement, or maybe I was just being impatient, but I started dreading it. Not because I suddenly hate creating, but because it stopped meaning anything. I was just creating to get it over with. And when something you once cared about starts feeling like a chore you have to psych yourself up for, is that laziness? You know, that there might have been a shift that you've missed for. Your discipline isn't coming from desire anymore. It's coming from fear. You're not showing up because you care or you're excited to build something. You're showing up because you're afraid to fall behind. You're running from what you're afraid will happen if you stop. Because stopping feels risky. Because stopping means disappointing people, and that's even worse. Because walking away would mean admitting that every effort you've put in might have been wasted. And at that point, when you rest, it doesn't feel like rest. It feels like failure. Like the time to rest and recharge would be better off doing something. Anything. 5, you resent people who seem free. Especially 2 kinds of people. First, the ones who've already made it. And you know they work hard for it, so you can't even write them off as lucky. Second, the ones who are still building, but somehow things are already starting to click for them. They're tired, yeah, but they're seeing momentum. They're getting feedback, they're getting rewards, movement, from what they're building. And you're sitting there asking yourself, like, how are they doing that when I can barely put one foot in front of the other without stumbling back? It's not that you want what they have, it's that watching them reminds you how heavy everything feels where you are. So instead of feeling inspired, you feel irritated because their ease highlights how much force you've been putting just to stay in place. So the resentment isn't usually about them. It's about the life you're still trying to force, not giving anything back. Okay, 6th and the last one. You're performing stability while privately unraveling. And this actually ties back to one of the earlier signs, especially the one about discipline being fueled by fear instead of desire. From the outside, everything looks good. Okay, you're showing up, you're consistent, you're doing what you're supposed to do. But privately, you're exhausted in a way that rest doesn't fix anymore. You feel behind no matter what you do, and keeping it together feels like it takes more energy than the work itself. So at that point, being disciplined is less about building a life and more about maintaining the appearance of having one. And you keep saying it's fine. Like, if you say it enough times, it'll become true. And the wild part is, from the outside, this still looks like discipline, which is usually when the cover stories kick in. Nah, I'm just building discipline. This is part of the process. It's not supposed to be fun. I'll just need to try harder, be more consistent. If I quit, I'm weak. That last one was my go-to for a long time. Character development, apparently. And the thing is, this pattern isn't exclusive to work or hustle. It's just easier to spot in those areas because, I don't know, it's socially rewarded, but it shows up in other areas too. Okay, let me put it this way. Say you are in a relationship. He's not a bad guy, he's just not your guy. You've spent enough time with him to know that your standards don't match, your values don't align, You just don't complement each other. But instead of breaking things off, you try to be patient. You try to work on it. You start shaping him into this person that he was never going to be. And slowly, you resent him for not becoming what you needed. But what do? You still stay for something that you know isn't meant for you. That's not love. That's martyrdom. You're not saving the relationship. You're driving yourself into the ground, trying to make it work. And this is the part that people miss. The behavior doesn't change just because the setting does. This same pattern of self-abandonment shows up in work, in hustle, in careers that people glorify. But internally, you're negotiating with a part of yourself that's already exhausted. Self-improvement adds to you. Self-abandonment subtracts from you. The difference is subtle, but your body is already clocking which one you're in, for sure. So yeah, if something feels off, even though it looks like progress, you're not imagining it. So maybe pause for a second. That doesn't make you weak. And it just means you're paying attention. So you're allowed to question it. Not everything that looks like growth actually makes your life better. And not everything that feels hard is worth enduring. Okay, I'm not saying that nothing really comes out of it, because something always does. I just don't think growth should cost you your sense of self. Sometimes the lesson is just realizing, okay, never doing that again. Anyway, that's today's overthinking session. Take what lands, ignore the rest. Thanks for hanging out with me, and stay for the next one if you feel like it.